Tonight, we will sit together with ancient Buddhist teachings and Zen stories. These words have traveled a great distance to meet you here. They have crossed mountains and rivers and passed through more than 2,000 years of human longing and wisdom. They come to you now not as lessons to be learned, but as gifts to be received. Like rain falling on soft earth, they ask nothing of you but your willingness to listen. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. You do not need to grasp or hold on to anything tonight. Let the words wash over you like gentle water. Take what serves you. Release what does not. Trust that something deeper than your thinking mind knows exactly what you need. Take a slow, deep breath, and let's begin our journey together. There is a story that has been told for thousands of years. It is the story of the Buddha and of the night when he finally came home to himself. Before he was the Buddha, the awakened one, he was simply a man who had left behind wealth and comfort because something in his heart told him there must be more to life than pleasure and more to peace than the absence of pain. For 6 long years he wandered, searching for the end of suffering. He sat with teachers. He practiced disciplines so harsh that his body grew thin as a reed. He tried everything the seekers of his time had tried, and still the peace he sought remained just out of reach. One evening, weary but undeterred, he came to a great tree beside a flowing river. The tree was old and wide, its roots drinking deep from the earth, its branches spreading like open arms against the sky. He sat down in its shade and made a quiet vow. He would not rise from this spot until he understood. The night that followed would change everything. As darkness fell, the Buddha sat in stillness. His breath moved gently in and out. The sounds of the forest rose and fell around him, and his mind, like a lake disturbed by wind, began to show him everything it had been holding. Old fears arose like shadows. Old desires called to him with familiar voices. Memories of the life he had left behind played themselves out in vivid detail. The faces of those he loved, the comforts he had abandoned, the question that had haunted him since he first saw old age, sickness, and death: is there no way beyond this suffering? He did not fight what arose. He did not try to push it away or grasp it tightly. He simply sat, present and patient, watching the movements of his own mind as one might watch clouds drifting across the face of the moon. Sometimes the clouds were dark and heavy. Sometimes they were light and swift. But behind them, always, the moon remained. The sky remained. The stillness at the heart of everything remained. Hours passed. The deepest part of the night came and went. The first faint light began to soften the eastern sky. And then, as the morning star appeared, something shifted. It was not like thunder. It was not like lightning. It was more like the moment when you finally see what has always been in front of you. A quiet recognition, a settling into place. The clouds parted, and he saw clearly what had been hidden in plain sight all along. He saw how the mind builds its own suffering, thought by thought, moment by moment. He saw the craving that drives this building, the endless reaching for what is pleasant and pushing away of what is not. And he saw that this craving can end. That peace is not something to be found somewhere else. It is here, now, always, waiting only for the grasping to stop. In that moment, he became the Buddha, the one who woke up, The first words that arose in his heart were words of quiet wonder. They came like a song, like a poem spoken to the dawn itself. "O house builder, you have now been seen. You shall build no house again. All your rafters are broken. Your ridgepole is destroyed. The mind has reached the unconditioned. Achieved is the end of craving." These words have been treasured for over 2,000 years. Let us sit with them now, letting them settle into us like stones settling into still water. "O house builder, you have now been seen. What is this house? And who is the builder?" The house is the sense of self we construct moment by moment. It is the feeling of being a separate someone, walled off from the rest of life, needing to protect and defend and acquire and become. We build this house with every thought of "I want," and "I fear," and "I am this," and "I am not that." We add rooms of memory and hallways of hope. We decorate with stories about our past and dreams about our future. Perhaps you can feel this house right now. The sense of being inside something. The boundary between you and the world. This feeling is so familiar, so constant, that we rarely question it. It seems as natural as breathing. But the Buddha saw something remarkable. He saw that this house has no foundation. It is built on empty air. It is made entirely of thoughts and feelings, arising and passing away, with nothing solid at the center. The builder keeps building, but what is built cannot last. It must be rebuilt again and again, moment after moment, a never-ending labor. "You have now been seen," the Buddha said to this habit of building. "You shall build no house again." This is not a threat or a battle cry. It is simply the recognition that when we truly see how we create our own suffering, the creation begins to slow. When we catch the builder at work, the builder's power fades. Not through force, but through the gentle light of awareness itself. The mind has reached the unconditioned. Achieved is the end of craving. The unconditioned. This is a word worth lingering over. Most of what we experience is conditioned. It arises because of something else. We feel happy because something pleasant happened. We feel sad because something was lost. We feel afraid because we imagine something threatening. Like links in a chain, one thing gives rise to the next, endlessly. This is the world of coming and going, of arising and passing away, of building and breaking down. But the Buddha touched something that is not part of this chain, something that does not depend on conditions, something that was never born and therefore can never cease. He called it the unconditioned, the deathless, nibbana. And he said that reaching this is the same as reaching the end of craving. Why would these two go together? Why would touching the unconditioned bring craving to an end? Imagine a traveler wandering through a desert, desperately thirsty. They see water shimmering in the distance. They run toward it. It disappears. They see it again, somewhere else. They run again. Again it vanishes. This is what craving is like. It promises satisfaction just ahead, but the satisfaction never truly arrives. Or if it does, it fades so quickly that soon we find ourselves running again. Now imagine that this same traveler stumbles upon a hidden spring. Cool, clear water, bubbling up from deep in the earth. They drink. They rest. They are satisfied. Not because they caught the mirage, but because they found something real. Something that was always there. waiting to be discovered. The unconditioned is like that spring. It is not another experience to chase after. It is the ground beneath all experiences, the stillness at the heart of all movement. When we touch it, even for a moment, the running stops. Not because we have forced ourselves to stop wanting, but because we have found what we were actually looking for all along. The Buddha once said, "There is, monks, an unborn, unoriginated, unmade, unconditioned. If there were not this unborn, unoriginated, unmade, unconditioned, there would be no escape from the born, originated, made, conditioned." In other words, freedom is possible because there is something in us that was never bound. Peace is available because there is something that was never disturbed. We do not have to create this freedom or manufacture this peace. We only have to stop obscuring it with our endless building, our endless craving, our endless construction of houses that cannot stand. Now, when we hear teachings like these, it would be natural to feel that they describe something very far away. We might think, that is beautiful, but the Buddha was special. I am ordinary. I am still so full of wanting. I still build my house day after day. And this is true for most of us. The habit of craving is strong. It has been with us for as long as we can remember. The complete and permanent end of craving may seem as distant as the stars. But here is something wonderful. We do not have to wait for complete liberation to taste freedom. The end of craving is not only a final destination, it is also a present possibility. It is available right now, in this very breath, if we know how to look. There is an old teaching that says, practice the recognition of freedom for short moments, many times. Not one great accomplishment, but countless small openings. Not a single dramatic awakening, but a gentle, repeated remembering. This is such a kind teaching. It asks nothing impossible of us. It does not demand that we become someone we are not, or achieve some distant state we can barely imagine. It simply invites us to notice, again and again, what is already here. Is it possible to let go of craving for a moment? You do not have to do anything special. Simply notice if there is any reaching in the mind, any wanting things to be different, any grasping at a future moment, or pushing away the present one. This reaching is so familiar that we often do not even notice it. It feels like simply being alive. But if you look carefully, you can sense it. A subtle leaning forward, a quiet tension, a feeling that this moment is not quite enough, that something else is needed. And then, gently, let that reaching soften. Like a hand that is being clenched slowly opening, like a held breath finally releasing. You are not fighting anything. You are simply allowing what is tight to become loose, what is held to become free. Feel what happens when the wanting quiets. The mind becomes spacious. The body settles. There is a sense of arrival, of being fully here, of needing nothing else. It may only last a heartbeat. The habit will return, as habits do. But for that heartbeat, you have tasted something true. As the Buddha said, the taste of freedom is a single taste. Whether you touch it for a moment or rest in it forever, the taste is the same. Each moment of letting go is complete in itself. Each pause in the building is a glimpse of what lies beyond all walls. After his awakening, the Buddha sat beneath that tree for many days, simply enjoying the peace he had found. He was not sure, at first, whether to try to share what he had discovered. It was subtle, he thought. It went against the current of the world. Would anyone understand? But then compassion moved him. He thought of all the beings wandering in confusion, building their houses again and again, suffering without knowing why. And he thought, there are some with only a little dust in their eyes. Perhaps they will hear. He rose and walked to find his old companions, 5 fellow seekers who had once practiced with him. When they saw him approaching, something in his presence made them forget their disappointment in him. They stood and listened. And there, in a deer park, with the afternoon light falling golden through the trees, the Buddha spoke the first teaching. He called it setting the wheel of truth in motion. In it, he laid out the 4 noble truths that would become the foundation of everything he taught. There is suffering. There is a cause of suffering. There is an end to suffering. There is a path leading to that end. Simple words, profound beyond measure. This, he said, is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, the fading and cessation, the renunciation, relinquishment, and letting go of craving. Each word is a doorway. They do not speak of struggle or force. They speak of release, of something tight becoming loose, of something grasped being set free. That teaching, given so long ago in a quiet grove, has never stopped traveling. It crossed mountains and rivers and oceans. It was carried by wandering monks walking dusty roads, by devoted lay people sharing what they had learned, by scholars carefully copying texts by candlelight. It was written on palm leaves and later on paper, translated into countless languages, memorized, chanted, debated, and most importantly, practiced. Generation after generation, people sat quietly as you are sitting now. They listened as you are listening. They too had doubts and fears, restless minds and aching bodies. They too wondered if freedom was really possible for ordinary people like them. And many discovered that it was, not because they were special, but because the truth the Buddha spoke is universal. It belongs to no one time, no one place, no one kind of person. It is simply the way things are. Now, after all these centuries and all these miles, the teaching has arrived here, in this moment, in these words, in your heart. Think of all the hands that passed it along, all the voices that spoke it, all the minds that understood it and were changed. You are part of that unbroken chain now, not as someone who must achieve something difficult, but as someone who can receive what is freely given. The Buddha once said, I have shown you the path. It is up to you to walk it. You do not have to walk far tonight. You do not have to reach any destination. Simply rest here, knowing that the path exists, knowing that countless others have walked it before you, knowing that the house builder can be seen, and in being seen, can finally rest. The same peace the Buddha touched under that ancient tree is available to you now, not as something to achieve, but as something to allow. Not somewhere else, but right here. Not later, but now. Let us rest in that possibility for a moment. Take a slow breath now. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a story about a young monk who traveled a great distance to sit with an old teacher. The teacher lived simply in a small hut at the edge of a forest, where the trees grew tall and the air smelled of pine and earth. She was known throughout the land for her wisdom and her kindness, and for a way of teaching that used few words but said much. The young monk arrived as the sun was setting, tired from his journey but eager to learn. He had read many books. He had memorized many sutras. He understood, or thought he understood, that craving was the root of suffering and that freedom came from letting go. The teacher welcomed him with a gentle nod and gestured for him to sit. Her hut was spare but warm, with a small fire burning and cushions arranged on a simple wooden floor. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if each gesture was a teaching in itself. For a long while, she said nothing. She simply prepared tea, her weathered hands steady as she poured hot water over dried leaves. The steam rose in delicate curls between them. The young monk watched, growing restless. He had come so far. He had so many questions. Finally, he could wait no longer. "Venerable teacher," he said, "I have studied the teachings for many years. I know that craving causes suffering. I know that the end of craving is peace. But I do not know how to stop craving. No matter how hard I try, the wanting never stops." The old teacher smiled. She lifted her cup and took a slow sip. "Tell me," she said, her voice soft as falling leaves, "are you thirsty right now?" The young monk considered. The journey had been long, the day warm. "Yes," he admitted. "I am thirsty." "Good," she said. "Then drink." She gestured to the cup before him. He lifted it and drank. The tea was warm and slightly sweet, and it soothed his dry throat. "Now," the teacher said, "are you still thirsty?" He paused. The thirst was gone. "No, not anymore." "Where did the thirst go?" The young monk opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Where had the thirst gone? A moment ago it had been so present, so real, filling his awareness. Now it was simply not there. "I do not know," he said honestly. "It just faded." The teacher nodded slowly. "This is the first lesson. You do not have to make craving stop. You only have to watch it. It stops on its own." This is one of the most gentle truths in all the Buddha's teachings. We do not have to struggle against our wanting. We do not have to fight it or suppress it or pretend it is not there. We simply have to watch it with patience and curiosity, and it will show us its own nature. And what is that nature? Impermanence. Everything that arises also passes away. This is the great law that governs all things, from the turning of the seasons to the movement of thoughts in the mind. No craving has ever lasted forever. No desire has ever been permanent. They rise like waves, and like waves, they fall. The Buddha spoke of this often. He said, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Turning away from suffering. Not through force, but through seeing. Not through struggle, but through understanding. This is the way of wisdom, and it begins with something as simple as watching a cup of tea cool, or noticing how thirst fades after drinking. The young monk stayed with the teacher for many seasons. Each day brought new lessons, though they were rarely what he expected. One morning, they sat together in the small garden behind the hut. The day was fresh and clear. Birds sang in the branches overhead. A gentle breeze carried the scent of wild herbs, and somewhere nearby, a stream murmured over stones. Today, the teacher said, I want you to simply sit here and watch your mind. Do not try to meditate. Do not try to achieve anything. Just watch what happens. The young monk settled himself on the soft grass. At first, his mind was relatively quiet. He noticed the sounds around him, the warmth of the sun on his face. This is easy, he thought. I am peaceful. Then, gradually, a thought arose. It would be pleasant to have something to eat. He noticed the thought and gently let it go. A few moments later, another thought. I wonder what the teacher thinks of my practice. Is she watching me? Am I doing well? He noticed this too and tried to let it go, but it lingered. Then his knee began to ache. He wanted to shift his position. He wanted the ache to stop. This wanting grew stronger, filling his attention until he could think of nothing else. Finally, after what felt like a very long time, the teacher rang a small bell. Tell me what you noticed, she said. The young monk sighed. I noticed that my mind would not be still. First I wanted food. Then I wanted your approval. Then I wanted my knee to stop hurting. I am a poor student. I could not stop the wanting. The teacher laughed softly. It was a kind laugh, with no mockery in it. You are an excellent student, she said. You noticed the wanting. That is the whole practice. But I did not stop it. I did not ask you to stop it. I asked you to watch it. She paused. Tell me, when you were wanting your knee to stop hurting, what did that wanting feel like? The young monk thought carefully. It felt tight, like something was gripping me. I could not think of anything else. Yes, the teacher said. This is what wanting feels like. A grip, a tightness. The ancient teachers called it tanha, which means thirst. They also called it the fever of unsatisfied longing. Can you feel how accurate these words are? The young monk nodded slowly. He could feel it. Now tell me, she continued, when I rang the bell and the sitting was over, what happened to that wanting? Again, the young monk paused. What had happened? The bell had rung, and somehow the desperate wanting had simply dissolved. It faded, he said. I did not do anything. It just went away. And how did that feel? He searched for words. It felt like being released, like I had been holding something tightly, and suddenly my hand opened. The teacher nodded. This is the second lesson. When wanting fades, there is ease. You do not have to create this ease. It is what remains when the gripping stops. What the teacher was pointing to is something we can all discover for ourselves. There is a particular texture to wanting, a quality we can learn to recognize. It is like a clenched fist in the mind, a subtle but persistent tension that colors everything. When we want something, the body leans forward, the breath becomes shallow, the attention narrows. There is a feeling of incompleteness, as if this moment is not quite enough, as if something is missing that must be found. And when the wanting passes, as it always does, there is a release. The fist opens. The breath deepens. The mind settles back into the present moment, like water finding its own level. The Buddha described this release with many beautiful images. He spoke of a still forest pool, clear and undisturbed. He spoke of a flame that has gone out, no longer flickering in the wind. He spoke of a burden set down after a long journey. Letting go of the burden, he said, the sage finds peace. What is this burden? It is not life itself. It is not experience. The burden is the constant wanting, the endless reaching, the never satisfied craving that makes us feel like this moment is not enough. When we set down this burden, even for a moment, we discover that peace was here all along. One evening, as they sat by a small fire, the young monk asked the teacher a question that had been forming in him for many months. The night was cool and quiet. Stars were appearing in the darkening sky, one by one. Venerable teacher, the Buddha spoke of the end of craving as the greatest peace. But craving never truly ends. It arises again and again. How can there be an end to something that keeps returning? The old teacher gazed into the fire. The flames danced and flickered, casting soft shadows on the walls of the hut. Let me tell you something I learned many years ago, she said, when I was young like you and just as confused. She drew her shawl closer around her shoulders. I used to think that the end of craving meant reaching some final state where wanting would never arise again. I imagined it as a distant mountain peak, impossibly far away. I would walk the path for years, perhaps lifetimes, and someday I would arrive at that peak and never experience craving again. She paused to add a small branch to the fire. Then one day, I was sitting in meditation, and a desire arose. Something small. I do not even remember what it was, and I watched it as I had learned to do. I felt the grip, the tightness, and then, as I watched, it faded. It dissolved like mist in morning sunlight. Her voice softened, and in that moment of fading, I tasted something. A peace, a freedom. It was brief, just a few heartbeats. But it was real, and I realized something that changed my whole understanding. The young monk waited, barely breathing. The end of craving is not only a final destination, the teacher said. It is also a present possibility. We can taste it now, in this very moment, whenever craving releases its grip. Not forever, not completely, just for a moment. But that moment is real. That peace is genuine. She looked at him directly, her eyes bright in the firelight. Do you understand? We do not have to wait for some distant achievement. We can practice the end of craving right now, for short moments, many times. Each taste is complete in itself. Short moments, many times. This is one of the most liberating teachings in all the traditions of awakening. It asks nothing impossible of us. It does not demand that we become different people or achieve extraordinary states. It simply invites us to notice, again and again, what is already here when we stop reaching. The Buddha himself pointed to this when he said, "There is no meditation for one who does not see clearly. There is no clear seeing for one who does not meditate. One who both sees clearly and meditates is close to peace." Seeing clearly is not something added to our experience. It is simply experience without the haze of craving, without the fog of grasping. When we stop reaching, even for a moment, the seeing becomes clear. The peace becomes evident. Not because we have created it, but because we have stopped obscuring it. This is available to all of us, not just to monks in forest huts, but to anyone willing to pause and look. The grip of wanting loosens many times each day, if only we notice. In the space between one thought and the next, in the moment of satisfaction after a meal, in the quiet before sleep. These small gaps are doorways. Each one offers a taste of freedom. The young monk carried this teaching with him for the rest of his life. In the years that followed, he would often remember that evening by the fire, the teacher's gentle voice, the dancing flames, the deep quiet of the forest. He learned to watch his wanting without struggle. When desire arose, he noticed it with curiosity. He felt the grip, the tightness, the leaning forward, and he waited patiently, knowing that it would pass. And when it passed, he rested in the ease that remained. Sometimes just for a breath, sometimes longer. But always, he tasted that simple peace, that natural freedom that had been there all along. He came to understand what the teacher had shown him. The peace we seek is not something we create. It is what we are when we stop disturbing ourselves. It is the stillness beneath the waves, the silence beneath the sound. It has been said, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Letting go. This is the heart of it. Not forcing, not struggling, not achieving. Simply letting go, again and again, and discovering what remains. Let us rest here for a moment. Feel the ease in your body. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been exploring the nature of craving, this thirst that the Buddha placed at the very center of his teachings on suffering. We have seen how wanting has a texture we can learn to recognize, and how it fades on its own when we simply watch it with patience. But perhaps you are thinking, these teachings are about great cravings, powerful desires that drive people to desperate acts. What about the small wants, the ordinary longings that fill an ordinary day? What about the gentle pull toward comfort, the quiet wish for things to be just slightly different than they are? The truth is, the Buddha's teaching applies to all of it. The great cravings and the small ones are made of the same substance. They differ only in intensity, like waves that differ in size but are all made of water. And often, it is the small, unnoticed wants that teach us the most, precisely because they are so familiar, so constant, so easy to overlook. Let us explore some stories of ordinary wanting and see what they might reveal. There is a story about a revered teacher who was known throughout the land for his wisdom and his kindness. He had spent decades in meditation and study. He had helped countless people find peace. His mind was clear and his heart was vast. One day, this teacher was traveling to give a teaching in a distant town. His carriage passed through a busy marketplace, and as it moved slowly through the crowded streets, he found himself gazing out the window at the stalls and shops lining the way. The market was alive with color and sound. Merchants called out their wares. Children darted between the stalls. The smell of spices and incense drifted through the air. And everywhere, Objects were displayed to catch the eye. Bolts of colorful cloth, strange instruments made of brass and wood, curious boxes and containers, items the teacher had never seen before and could not even name. As the carriage rolled past, the teacher noticed something amusing arising in his own mind. He found himself wanting things he did not even recognize. There was no practical desire here, no genuine need. He did not know what these objects were or what they did. He had no use for brass instruments or painted boxes, but something in them appealed to the eye, and the mind reached out toward them automatically, like a hand reaching for a piece of ripe fruit. Later, when he arrived at his destination, the teacher shared this observation with his students. He laughed gently at himself as he told the story. Even after all these years, he said, the wanting mind still arises. I saw objects I could not identify, and still the mind said, that looks nice. I would like that. The students laughed too, recognizing themselves in his words. This is the nature of mind, the teacher continued. It reaches, it grasps, it wants. This is not a personal failing. It is simply what untrained minds do. The practice is not to condemn this movement, but to see it clearly. When we see it, we are no longer completely caught by it. There is something both humbling and liberating in this story. Here was a great teacher, someone who had dedicated his life to understanding the mind, and still the wanting arose unbidden. Still, the hand of desire reached out toward shiny objects in a marketplace. This tells us something important. We are not broken. We are not uniquely afflicted. The movement of craving is universal, woven into the very fabric of how minds work. The Buddha himself acknowledged this when he said that craving is the cause of suffering for all beings, not just for the unwise or the unspiritual. But the story also shows us the way forward. The teacher noticed. He saw the wanting arise, recognized it for what it was, and smiled at it with gentle humor. He did not beat himself up for having desires. He did not pretend to be beyond such things. He simply saw clearly, and in that seeing, the craving lost its grip. This is available to all of us. We do not have to become great teachers or spend decades in meditation. We simply have to start noticing. The wanting is already there, arising countless times each day. All we need to do is see it. There is another pattern of wanting that is even more subtle and perhaps even more common. We might call it the habit of seeking something to want. Imagine a person sitting quietly at home on a peaceful evening. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing lacking. And yet the mind grows restless. It begins to search for something to desire. Perhaps they wander to the kitchen and open the cupboards, not because they are hungry, but because they are looking for something to want. They gaze at the shelves, waiting for something to call to them. Nothing does, but still, they look. Maybe the next shelf, maybe the next cupboard, or imagine someone leafing through a merchant's catalogue, or wandering through a market with no particular errand. They are not looking for anything specific. They are looking for something to want. The eye moves from object to object, waiting for that little spark of desire to ignite. Oh, that is nice. I would like that. Have you ever noticed this in yourself? This restless searching for the next thing to crave? It is a peculiar habit when you think about it. We are not satisfying a desire. We are hunting for a desire to satisfy. We are seeking the seeking itself. The ancient teachers recognized this pattern. They saw that craving is not only directed at objects. It can become a habit so deep that we crave the craving itself. The mind becomes addicted to wanting, uncomfortable with the simplicity of just being. A Zen master once observed, "The problem is not that we have desires. The problem is that we desire to have desires." This is worth sitting with for a moment. How much of our restlessness comes not from genuine needs, but from this habit of seeking something to want? When we are quiet, when nothing is wrong, when the moment is complete in itself, the mind may grow uncomfortable. It is not used to peace. It does not know what to do with stillness. And so it goes searching, looking for the next thing to reach toward, the next wave to ride. The Buddha spoke of this as the mind that proliferates. It takes one thing and spins it into many. It takes a simple moment and complicates it with wanting. It cannot leave well enough alone. But here is the good news. This habit, like all habits, can be seen. And when it is seen, it begins to loosen. We notice the restless searching. We feel the discomfort with simplicity. And instead of following the mind on its hunt for the next desire, we can simply stay where we are. We can rest in the moment that is already complete. This is not easy at first. The habit of seeking is strong. But each time we notice it and choose not to follow, we weaken its hold. We discover that peace is not something we need to find. It is what remains when we stop searching. Let us turn now to another story, this one about the persistence of small desires. A practitioner was spending time in silent retreat at a quiet monastery, nestled in the hills far from any town. The days were simple, sitting, walking, eating, sleeping. No conversation, no books, no distractions. Just the mind and its movements, laid bare beneath the clear light of attention. The monastery was peaceful. Birds sang in the morning. Wind rustled through the trees. The food was plain but nourishing. There was nothing to do but practice, and nothing to want. Or so the practitioner thought. One afternoon, while sitting in meditation, a thought arose. A cup of tea would be nice. It was a small thought, gentle and reasonable. Tea was served at certain hours, and this was not one of them. But the thought had a pleasant quality, a warmth to it. The practitioner noticed it, labeled it as thinking, and returned attention to the breath. A few moments later, the thought returned. A cup of tea. Warm, comforting, perhaps with a little honey. The steam rising. The cup warm in the hands. Again, the practitioner noticed and let go. Returned to the breath. Felt the air moving in and out. But the thought kept coming back. 5 times. 10 times. 20 times. Each time it was noted and released, and each time it arose again, patient and persistent, like a small animal that keeps returning to a door, hoping to be let in. Finally, after what felt like hours of this gentle battle, the practitioner gave up and went to make tea. This story might make you smile. It is such a small desire, so harmless, so ordinary. A cup of tea. What could be more innocent? And yet there is something profound hidden in this simple account. The practitioner discovered that the power of wanting has nothing to do with the size or importance of what is wanted. A cup of tea can grip the mind just as tightly as any grand ambition. A small desire can have roots that reach very deep. This is because craving is not really about the object. It is about the movement of the mind, the reaching, the grasping, the sense that this moment is not enough, that something more is needed. Whether we reach for tea or for wealth, for comfort or for fame, the movement is the same. The Buddha pointed to this when he said, "It is not the external things that bind us. It is the internal craving for them." A cup of tea cannot bind anyone, but the wanting of the tea, the reaching and grasping and insisting, this can occupy the mind for hours. This can disturb a perfectly peaceful afternoon. This is the nature of craving. It is not the object that causes suffering, but the wanting itself. There is another teaching hidden in this story. The thought of tea arose, and the practitioner noted it and let go. And then it arose again, and again. This is how it is with practice. We do not let go once, and then we are free. We let go 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Each arising is a new opportunity. Each letting go is a small freedom. We are not trying to achieve a state where wanting never arises. We are learning to meet each arising with awareness, with patience, with a gentle willingness to begin again. The cup of tea will call. It will call many times, and each time we have a choice. We can follow the wanting, or we can simply notice it and stay where we are. Neither choice is wrong, but over time, as we practice, we discover that we are less and less compelled. The wanting arises, but we are not pulled along by it. We can watch it arise and watch it fade, like watching clouds pass across the sky. This is freedom. Not the absence of clouds, but the vastness of sky that holds them all. Perhaps the deepest teaching in all of this is one of compassion. Compassion for ourselves and for all beings caught in the web of wanting. We are not bad for having desires. We are not failures for being pulled by craving again and again. This is simply the human condition. This is what minds do. The Buddha did not teach the end of craving because he was disappointed in us. He taught it because he saw our suffering and wanted to show us the way out. When we notice ourselves wanting things we do not need, searching for something to desire, returning again and again to the same small craving, we can meet this with kindness. We can smile, as the teacher smiled at his own wanting in the marketplace. We can be gentle with ourselves, as the practitioner was gentle after finally going to make tea. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This includes the parts of us that want, the parts that reach and grasp and seek. They too deserve our kindness. They are not enemies to be conquered. They are simply habits to be understood. So here is what we have learned, sitting together in the quiet of this evening. Wanting is not reserved for great desires. It weaves through the most ordinary moments of our lives. It reaches for things we do not even recognize. It searches for something to want when there is nothing we need. It returns again and again to the smallest comforts, patient and persistent. And all of this is okay. All of this is simply the movement of mind, doing what it has learned to do. The practice is not to stop this movement. The practice is to see it, to notice, to bring the light of awareness to what has been happening in darkness. And in that seeing, something shifts. The grip loosens. The compulsion fades. We discover that we can want something without being controlled by the wanting. As one teacher put it, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities of life continue. The desires arise and pass. But we are no longer lost in them. We see them for what they are, and in that seeing, we are free. Let us rest here for a moment. Let these stories settle into you like rain settling into the earth. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been sitting with stories of ordinary wanting, but there is a question we have not yet asked, a question that lies beneath all of this. Why do we keep wanting? If craving brings suffering, if the grip of desire is uncomfortable, if the fever of longing disturbs our peace, why do we return to it again and again? Why, after a lifetime of wanting and getting and wanting again, do we still reach for the next thing? The answer is simple, and it is worth understanding deeply. We keep wanting because wanting makes a promise. It whispers to us, softly and seductively, that fulfillment lies just ahead. That happiness is waiting in the next experience, the next possession, the next achievement. That this time, finally, we will be satisfied. This is the voice of craving, and it is very convincing. There is a story about a traveler walking through a vast desert. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the heat rose from the sand in shimmering waves. The desert stretched in every direction, endless and the same, golden dunes rolling like frozen waves beneath a burning sky. The traveler had been walking for many days, and thirst had become a constant companion, a dry ache that never quite left. Then, on the horizon, the traveler saw something shimmering. Water. A lake, blue and cool, waiting just ahead. Palm trees seemed to sway at its edges. The traveler's heart leaped with hope, and weary legs found new strength. Just a little further, just a little more, and then rest, and then satisfaction, and then, finally, peace. But as the traveler drew closer, the lake receded. It was always just ahead, always just out of reach. The palm trees dissolved into heat and light. The shimmering water was not water at all, but a trick of light and air, a mirage, an empty promise painted on the sky. Still, the traveler kept walking toward it. What else was there to do? The mirage was the only promise of relief in all that emptiness. Even knowing it might not be real, the traveler followed it across the burning sand, step after step, hope after hope. This is how craving works in our lives. It shows us shimmering images of happiness, always just ahead, always promising that satisfaction is near. If I get this, I will be content. If I achieve that, I will finally rest. If this situation changes, if this person loves me, if this problem is solved, then I will be at peace. And so we walk toward the mirage. We reach for the shimmering water. Sometimes we even seem to touch it. We get what we wanted. We achieve what we strived for. And for a moment, there is relief. There is pleasure. There is the sweet taste of satisfaction. But then what happens? The satisfaction fades. the pleasure passes. The thing we wanted becomes ordinary, familiar, no longer enough. And on the horizon, a new mirage appears, a new promise, a new whisper. This time, it will be different. This time you will be truly satisfied. The Buddha saw this pattern with perfect clarity. He said, "Craving is like a river that flows on and on, never reaching the sea. We follow the river, thinking it will lead us somewhere, but it only leads to more river, more wanting, more reaching. The sea of true satisfaction is never reached, because the river of craving does not flow there." The world around us is full of voices encouraging this endless pursuit. From the time we are young, we receive messages telling us that wanting is good, that desire is the path to happiness, that we should seek more, acquire more, experience more. In ancient marketplaces, merchants would call out the virtues of their wares, promising that this silk, this spice, this jewel would bring joy to the buyer. The message has always been the same. What you have is not enough. What you are is not enough. But if you get this thing, then you will be complete. There is a story about a wise fool who wandered from village to village, saying things that made people laugh and then think. One day, he stood in a busy market square and began to shout, "Come, come! I am selling the secret to happiness. Only one coin, the secret to lasting joy." A crowd gathered. People pushed forward, coins in hand, eager to hear. The wise fool took their coins, smiled broadly, and said, "Here is the secret. Stop believing that the next thing you buy will make you happy." The crowd laughed. Some were angry, but a few grew quiet and thoughtful. They had heard something true. This teaching is not against pleasure. It is not against enjoyment. The Buddha did not say that we should close ourselves off from the good things of life, that we should become grim and joyless in our pursuit of freedom. No, the teaching is subtler than that, and more kind. The teaching is simply this: understand the nature of what you are reaching for. Know that pleasures are real but temporary. Know that they cannot provide what they seem to promise. Know that the mirage, however beautiful, is still a mirage. With this understanding, we can enjoy what comes without being enslaved by it. We can taste the sweetness of life without desperately grasping for more. We can receive pleasure as a gift rather than demanding it as a right. The Buddha said, "There is no fear for one whose mind is not filled with desires." When we stop believing that we need the next pleasure to be complete, something relaxes in us. We can enjoy what is here, right now, without the anxious reaching for what is not here. We can rest in this moment, even if it contains no special pleasure at all. This is a profound freedom. Not the freedom to have whatever we want, but the freedom from needing to want. Let us sit with a question for a moment. It is a question worth asking, though the answer may be uncomfortable. How many pleasures have you already experienced in your life? Think of it. Really pause and consider. The meals you have enjoyed, from childhood treats to recent feasts. The beautiful sights you have seen, sunsets, mountains, the faces of those you love. The moments of comfort and ease, warm beds on cold nights, cool shade on hot days, the relief of rest after work, the laughter shared with friends, the warmth of embrace, the satisfaction of a task completed. the countless small pleasures that have passed through your days, often unnoticed, quickly forgotten. If you were to count them all, the number would be vast. Thousands upon thousands of pleasant experiences. A lifetime of pleasures, large and small, stretching back further than memory can easily reach. And yet, here you are, still seeking, still wanting, still feeling, at times, that something is missing, that some final satisfaction has not yet arrived. If pleasure could truly satisfy us, would this be so? If getting what we want could bring lasting peace, would we not have found it by now? We have been getting what we want, in various ways, since the day we were born. We have tasted countless sweetnesses. We have achieved countless goals. And still the wanting continues, undimmed. This is not a criticism. It is not meant to make you feel bad about yourself. It is simply an observation, clear and kind. And it points to something important. The happiness we truly seek cannot be found in the objects of desire. It must be found somewhere else. The Buddha pointed to this when he said, "Happiness does not depend on what you have or who you are. It solely relies on what you think." And what do we think? We think that the next thing will complete us. We think that satisfaction is waiting somewhere ahead. We think that this moment, as it is not quite enough. These thoughts are the real source of our restlessness. Not the absence of pleasure, but the presence of craving. There is an old teaching story about a king who had everything. His palace was filled with treasures from distant lands. His gardens were vast and beautiful, with fountains that sang and flowers that bloomed in every season. His table was laden with the finest foods, prepared by the most skilled cooks in the kingdom. Musicians played for him whenever he wished. Dancers danced. Poets composed verses in his honor. Every comfort the world could offer was his for the asking. And yet the king was not at peace. He lay awake at night, restless and unsatisfied. He wandered his magnificent gardens feeling empty. He ate the finest dishes and tasted nothing. Something was missing, something he could not name, and all his wealth could not purchase it. Finally, he summoned his wisest advisor, an old woman who had served in the palace since his father's time. She came and sat before him, patient and quiet. "I have everything a person could want," the king said, his voice heavy with confusion. "My storehouses are full. My lands are at peace. My family is healthy. And yet I am not happy. What is wrong with me?" The advisor thought for a long moment, her eyes kind. Then she said, "Your Majesty, you have everything. But you want everything. The having is not the problem. The wanting is." The king frowned. "But if I stop wanting, will I not become dull and lifeless? Will I not lose my passion, my drive? Is it not desire that moves us through life?" "No," said the advisor gently. "You will lose only your suffering. The flowers in your garden will still be beautiful, perhaps more beautiful than before. The food on your table will still nourish you. But you will enjoy them freely, without the fear of losing them and without the hunger for more. This is the secret the sages have always known. This is the peace that passes all understanding." The king sat with these words for a long time. He was not sure he understood. But something in them rang true, like a bell struck in a quiet room. This story points to a delicate balance that the Buddha's teaching invites us to find. We are not asked to reject the world or to punish ourselves with austerity. We are not asked to pretend that pleasant things are not pleasant. We are simply asked to see clearly. Pleasant experiences are pleasant. This is true. But they are also impermanent. They arise, they linger briefly, and they pass away. If we cling to them, if we demand that they stay, if we believe that we cannot be happy without them, then we suffer. Not because the pleasures are bad, but because our relationship to them is confused. A Zen teacher once said, "Enjoy the cherry blossoms when they bloom, but do not weep when they fall. Their falling is also beautiful." This is the attitude of one who has understood. Enjoyment without grasping. Appreciation without demand. Receiving the gifts of life with open hands, not clenched fists. So what does all of this mean for us, sitting here in the quiet of this evening? It means we can relax the endless pursuit. We can stop believing the whisper that says happiness is waiting in the next experience. We can recognize the mirage for what it is, even as we appreciate its shimmering beauty. The pleasures of life will still come. Good meals, beautiful sunsets, moments of connection and joy. They will come and they will go, as they always have. But we do not have to chase them with such desperate urgency. We do not have to stake our happiness on their arrival or their staying. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." This does not mean we should never enjoy external things. It means we should not depend on them for our peace. The peace is already here, within us, available in this very moment. The pleasures are like decorations on a tree that is already whole, beautiful, but not essential. We began this reflection by asking why we keep wanting. The answer, we discovered, is that wanting makes a promise. It whispers that fulfillment is just ahead. But now we have seen through the whisper. We have recognized the mirage. We have understood that countless pleasures have come and gone, and still we seek, because seeking in the wrong direction can never arrive. The invitation now is to turn around, to stop walking toward the mirage and instead to sit down, right here, right where we are, to discover that the peace we have been seeking was never somewhere else. It was always here, waiting beneath the noise of wanting, patient and still. This is not something to achieve. It is something to recognize. It is not far away. It is as close as your own breath. Let us rest in that recognition now. Take a slow, deep breath. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been exploring the nature of craving, how it whispers promises of happiness that never quite arrive. We have seen how the wanting mind reaches endlessly toward mirages, toward satisfactions that shimmer and fade. But there is another burden we carry, one so familiar that we rarely notice its weight. It is the burden of time itself. Not time as it actually is, but time as we imagine it to be. The past we drag behind us, the future we push ahead. Two invisible mountains resting on our shoulders, weighing us down even as we walk through what should be a simple, unencumbered present. Tonight, let us set these mountains down. Let us see them for what they truly are. There is a story about a traveler who came to visit a wise hermit living alone in the hills. The hermit was known throughout the region for her lightness, her ease, her way of moving through the world as if she carried nothing at all. People who met her often remarked on this quality. She seemed unburdened in a way they could not quite explain. While others trudged through life bent under invisible weights, she walked as if the air itself held her up. The traveler climbed the winding path to her small cottage, his legs tired from the journey, his mind heavy with all the concerns he had brought with him. He found her sitting outside on a worn wooden bench, watching clouds drift across the sky. The afternoon light was soft and golden. Birds sang in the nearby trees. She welcomed him with a warm smile and gestured for him to sit beside her. She poured tea from a simple clay pot into 2 cups, her movements unhurried, and they sat together in comfortable silence for a while. The traveler felt some of his agitation begin to settle, just from being in her presence. But the questions he had carried up the mountain still pressed on him. Finally, he spoke. "Teacher, I have traveled far to find you. People say you carry no burden, that you move through life with perfect ease. But my own life feels so heavy. The past weighs on me with regrets and memories I cannot shake. The future presses on me with worries and plans that give me no rest. I feel like I am carrying 2 great mountains everywhere I go. How do you live so lightly? What is your secret?" The hermit took a slow sip of her tea. She gazed out at the mountains in the distance, their peaks touching the clouds, their slopes blue with haze. "Tell me," she said gently, "where is the past right now?" The traveler frowned. "What do you mean?" "The past is behind me. It is everything that has already happened." "Yes, but where is it? Can you show it to me? Can you point to it?" The traveler looked around, confused. He pointed vaguely behind him. "It is back there. In time. In memory." "In memory," the hermit repeated gently. "And where is memory?" The traveler paused. "Memory is in my mind. It is thoughts about what happened before." "So the past is thoughts," the hermit said. "Thoughts arising now, in this present moment. Is that not so?" The traveler sat with this. It was true. When he remembered the past, he was having thoughts. Those thoughts were happening now, not then. The past itself was nowhere to be found. Only the thinking about it was real, and the thinking was always present. And the future? The hermit continued. "Where is that?" "Ahead of me," the traveler said, but his voice was uncertain now. "In time. In my plans and worries. In your plans and worries. And where are those?" Again, the traveler paused. His plans were thoughts. His worries were thoughts. They were happening now, in this moment. The future itself was not here, only the thinking about it. "The future is also thoughts," he said slowly. "Thoughts happening now." The hermit smiled. "Now you begin to see. We carry the past and the future like 2 great mountains on our shoulders. We drag them everywhere we go, groaning under their weight. But when we look closely, we discover something remarkable. These mountains are made of mist. They are made of thoughts, arising and passing in this present moment, as light and insubstantial as clouds." This teaching is one of the most liberating in all the Buddha's path. It does not require years of practice or special abilities. It simply requires a willingness to look, to see what is actually happening in our experience. When do we ever experience the past? Only now. A memory arises, and we are having that memory in this present moment. We label it past and toss it behind us, as if it exists back there somewhere, a real place we came from. But it does not exist back there. It exists only as a present moment thought. When do we ever experience the future? Only now. An anticipation arises, a worry, a plan, and we are having that thought in this present moment. We label it future and project it ahead of us, as if it exists out there somewhere, a real place we are heading toward. But it does not exist out there. It exists only as a present moment thought. The Buddha pointed to this when he said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." This is not merely advice about where to place our attention. It is a statement about the nature of reality itself. The past and future do not exist as places we can dwell in or dream of. They exist only as movements of mind, here and now. There is another story, this one about a practitioner on retreat. The retreat was held in a quiet place, far from towns and roads, where the days followed a simple rhythm of sitting and walking, eating and sleeping. It should have been peaceful. It should have been restful. But for this practitioner, it was not going well. Day after day, they sat in meditation, but the mind would not settle. There was pain in the knees and back that seemed to grow worse with each sitting. There was restlessness in the heart, a feeling of wanting to be anywhere but here. And there was an endless parade of thoughts that would not be quieted, no matter how many times attention was brought back to the breath. Boredom came in waves. Frustration followed close behind. By the fourth day, the practitioner was seriously considering leaving. What was the point of all this suffering? During a particularly difficult sitting on that fourth afternoon, a thought arose. It was a simple thought, almost casual. 4 more days of this. Such a small thought. Just 4 words. But the effect was immediate and crushing. The practitioner felt the weight of those 4 days land on their shoulders like a physical burden. They could feel it pressing down, making the breath shallow, making the body tense. 4 more days of this pain. 4 more days of this boredom. 4 more days of this struggle. The mind projected forward into all that imagined suffering, and despair settled in like a thick fog. The sitting became unbearable. The practitioner could barely breathe under the weight of those imagined days. Everything felt hopeless, pointless, too hard to continue. Tears of frustration pressed behind closed eyes. And then, something shifted. In a moment of clarity, the practitioner saw what had happened. A thought had arisen. Just a thought. 4 more days. And the mind had taken that thought and built it into a mountain, a vast and terrible future filled with suffering. But the future was not here. Only the thought was here. Only these 4 small words, arising and passing like any other thought. The practitioner looked at the thought with fresh eyes. 4 more days. It was just sounds in the mind. Just a brief movement of mental energy. It had no weight, no substance, no power except what was given to it. And in that seeing, the mountain dissolved. The weight lifted. There were no 4 more days. There was only this moment, this breath, this sitting. And this moment was manageable. This moment was actually quite simple. The practitioner began to laugh softly. Such a small thing, such an obvious truth, and yet it changed everything. Perhaps you have had experiences like this. A thought about the future arises, and suddenly you are carrying the weight of days or weeks or years that have not yet come. A thought about the past arises, and suddenly you are dragging behind you all the regrets and sorrows of a lifetime. But here is the liberating truth. You have never actually experienced the past or the future. You have only ever experienced this moment. The past and future are stories the mind tells, elaborate constructions made of thought, projected backward and forward in time. They feel real because we have been believing them for so long. But when we look directly, we find only now. A Zen master was once asked, "What is the most important moment?" He replied, "This one." And the most important thing to do? Whatever you are doing now. And the most important person? Whoever you are with. This teaching sounds simple, almost too simple, but it contains a profound freedom. If the most important moment is always this one, then we do not need to carry all the other moments with us. We can set them down. We can travel light. The practitioner on retreat carried this insight forward for the rest of their life. Whenever thoughts of past or future arose and began to build themselves into mountains, there was a choice. Not to fight the thoughts, not to push them away, but simply to see them clearly. A memory is a thought, arising now. A regret is a thought, arising now. An anticipation is a thought, arising now. A worry is a thought, arising now. And a thought in the present moment is very light. It is like a feather, like a leaf, like a wisp of cloud passing through an open sky. It has no power to burden us unless we believe it is something more than it is. The Buddha taught, nothing is worth holding on to. This includes our stories about the past. This includes our dreams and fears about the future. This includes even our ideas about what this present moment should be. All of it can be released. All of it can be set down. And when we set it down, we discover that we have been carrying unnecessary weight for a very long time. We discover that traveling light is possible. We discover that peace has been waiting for us, here all along, beneath the burden we no longer need to bear. So here is the invitation, gentle and clear. Notice when the mind travels to the past. Notice when it travels to the future. See these journeys for what they are, movements of thought, happening now, in this present moment. The past is not back there. The future is not out ahead. Both are here, as thoughts, light and passing. You do not have to stop these thoughts. You do not have to struggle against them. Simply see them. Recognize them. Know them for what they are. And in that knowing, feel the mountains begin to dissolve. Feel the mist thin and blow away. Feel the lightness that comes when you realize you have been carrying nothing real. The Buddha said, "In the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go? How deeply did you let go?" This is the question that matters. Not how much we accumulated or achieved, but how completely we released. how thoroughly we set down the burden, how willingly we crossed over to the further shore. Let us rest here for a moment, in this lightness. There is nowhere to go, nothing to carry, nothing to become. And when you are ready, we will continue together, moving deeper into these ancient and gentle teachings. There is a particular kind of craving that lives in our relationship with time. The Buddha called it the craving for becoming. It is subtler than the desire for pleasant experiences, quieter than the obvious wanting we explored earlier. But it runs very deep, like an underground river shaping the landscape above without ever being seen. Tonight, let us follow this river to its source. Let us see how we create ourselves, again and again, in the theater of our own minds. There is a story about a merchant who was known throughout his town for his constant planning. From the moment he woke until the moment he slept, his mind was busy with the future. He planned his business dealings weeks in advance. He imagined conversations that had not yet happened and rehearsed his replies. He pictured himself in situations that might arise and prepared for every possibility. Even in moments of rest, his mind continued its work, spinning out scenarios like a spider spinning webs. His wife noticed this tendency and, being a woman of some wisdom, grew concerned. She saw how her husband was present in body but absent in spirit. She saw how his eyes would grow distant even in the middle of their conversations, how his brow would furrow at thoughts she could not see. He was always somewhere else, living in a time that had not yet come. One evening, as they sat together after the day's work was done, the air cooling with the approach of night and the sounds of the town settling into quiet, she asked him a gentle question. "Husband, where are you right now?" The merchant looked up, surprised by the question. "I am here, of course, sitting with you in our home." "Are you?" she asked. "A moment ago, your eyes were distant. Your brow was furrowed. You were not here with me at all. You were somewhere else, speaking to someone else, living some other moment. Where had you gone?" The merchant paused. It was true. He had been thinking about a meeting scheduled for the following week. In his mind, he had been sitting across from a difficult customer in a dusty warehouse, negotiating a price for a shipment of cloth, defending his position, anticipating objections. He had been so absorbed in this imaginary scene that he had forgotten he was sitting in his own peaceful courtyard with his own wife on a quiet evening with stars beginning to appear overhead. "I was thinking about next week," he admitted, a little embarrassed. "Planning for a meeting." His wife nodded slowly. "And in this planning, who were you?" The merchant frowned. "What do you mean?" "I was myself, of course." "Were you? Or were you a version of yourself that does not yet exist? A future merchant, in a future meeting, saying future words?" The merchant sat with this question. It was strange to consider. In his mind, he had been someone. He had felt like himself, thinking and speaking and acting. But that self was not the one sitting here now. That self was an imagination, a projection, a character in a story that had not yet been written and might never be. "I suppose I was imagining a future me," he said slowly. "And how much of your life," his wife asked gently, "do you spend being this imaginary person instead of the one who is actually here?" This question goes to the heart of what the Buddha called the craving for becoming. It is not simply the desire for pleasant experiences in the future. It is the desire to be someone, to exist as a particular self, to continue and expand and become. We do this constantly, usually without noticing. We imagine ourselves in future situations. We rehearse conversations, plan achievements, picture outcomes. And in all of this imagining, we are creating a sense of self. A future me who will do this, accomplish that, become something other than what I am now. This is a very deep kind of craving. It is the craving not just for things, but for existence itself. For a self that continues, that grows, that becomes. The Buddha spoke of this when he said, "There is no self to be found, and yet beings wander on, driven by craving, creating selves again and again." We are like artists who cannot stop painting self-portraits. We paint ourselves into the future, then step into the painting and believe it is real. We paint ourselves into the past, then carry that portrait with us as if it were who we truly are. And all the while, the actual present moment, the only place where life is actually happening, goes unnoticed. Let us return to our merchant and his wife, for their conversation continued. The merchant had grown quiet after his wife's question. He was a thoughtful man, despite his busy mind, and he recognized the truth in what she was pointing toward. But something troubled him. "If I do not plan," he said, "how will I conduct my business? How will I prepare for what is to come? Surely some thinking about the future is necessary." His wife smiled. "Of course it is. I am not suggesting you abandon all planning. The rice must be planted in spring if it is to be harvested in autumn. The roof must be repaired before the rains come. This is simple wisdom." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But there is a difference between planning and being lost in planning. When you repair the roof, you know you are repairing the roof. You do not forget that you are standing on a ladder in the present moment. But when you plan in your mind, you often forget where you are. You become the future person so completely that the present person disappears." The merchant nodded slowly. This was true. When he was physically doing something, he knew he was doing it. But when he was mentally planning, he lost himself entirely. He became the character in his own imagination. "So what should I do?" he asked. "Notice," his wife said simply. "When you find yourself living in the future, notice it. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the breath in your body. Remember that you are here, now, imagining. You are not actually there, then, doing. This simple remembering changes everything." This is the practice the Buddha offered. It is contained in a single instruction, deceptively simple, endlessly deep. Not reviving the past. Not hoping to be in the future. Instead, with insight, see each arising state. Not reviving the past. When memories come, let them come and let them go. Do not climb into them and live there. Do not become the past self again and again. Not hoping to be in the future. When plans and fantasies arise, let them arise and let them pass. Do not climb into them and live there. Do not become the future self again and again. Instead, with insight, see each arising state. Stay here. Stay present. Watch the movements of mind as they happen, without being swept away by them. Know a thought as a thought. Know a plan as a plan. Know a memory as a memory. And remain rooted in this moment, where life is actually taking place. This does not mean we never think about past or future. It means we know when we are thinking about them. We do not disappear into the dream. We do not forget that we are the dreamer. A Zen teacher put it this way: when walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. Above all, do not wobble. The wobbling is the going back and forth between here and there, between now and then, between the self that is and the self we imagine. When we stop wobbling, we discover a steadiness we did not know was possible. We discover the peace of simply being what we are, where we are, without the endless project of becoming something else. There is another dimension to this craving for becoming that is worth exploring. It shows up not only in our grand plans and distant dreams, but in the smallest movements of meditation itself. It is so subtle that many practitioners never notice it, even after years of sitting. A practitioner once described this experience to a teacher. They were sitting together in a quiet room after a period of meditation, and the practitioner's face showed the kind of puzzlement that comes from touching something true but not quite grasping it. When I sit in meditation, the practitioner said, I notice a strange thing. I am with the breath, feeling the air move in and out, and yet there is a subtle leaning forward. It is hard to describe. It is as if I am with this breath in order to feel the next breath. I am with this moment in order to get to the next moment. I am present, yes, but I am present in order to become something. In order to get somewhere, there is a kind of waiting in it, a kind of expectation. The teacher nodded slowly. This was a familiar observation and an important one. This is very subtle, the teacher said, and very important to see. You have noticed what might be called the in order to mind. It is always doing one thing in order to get something else. It is never simply here. It is always using here as a stepping stone to there. Even in meditation, even in the midst of practice, it is trying to become peaceful rather than simply being at peace. But is that not how everything works? The practitioner asked. We breathe in so that we can breathe out. We eat so that we can have energy. We practice so that we can awaken. One thing leads to another. Is that not simply the way of things? On a practical level, yes, the teacher said. But the in order to mind is not practical. It is a kind of craving dressed up as wisdom. It thinks that peace is somewhere ahead, in the next breath, in the next moment, in the next experience. And so it never rests. It never arrives. It is always on the way, always leaning forward, always becoming, but never being. The teacher paused, letting this sink in. Outside, birds sang in the garden. Light fell softly through the window. The great secret, he continued, is that peace is not somewhere ahead. It is not waiting in the next breath or the next moment. It is here, in this breath, in this moment, or it is nowhere at all. When you stop leaning forward, when you stop doing this in order to get that, you discover that there is nowhere to go. You have already arrived. You have always been here. The search was the only thing preventing you from finding what you sought. This is perhaps the deepest teaching about craving for becoming. We spend our lives trying to arrive somewhere, trying to become something, trying to reach a state or achieve a goal that will finally allow us to rest. But the arriving can only happen now. The rest is only available here. The Buddha expressed this with characteristic simplicity. The past is already gone. The future is not yet here. There is only one moment for you to live, and that is the present moment. If we cannot rest in this moment, we will never rest. If we cannot be at peace with this breath, we will never be at peace. The future holds no peace that is not already available now. The becoming we long for cannot give us what simple being already offers. This is not a teaching about giving up our dreams or abandoning our plans. It is a teaching about where we place our center of gravity. Are we living from here, reaching out toward there when necessary? Or are we living in there, always grasping for a future that never comes? When our center is here, in this moment, in this breath, in this simple presence, then planning becomes light and easy. We think about tomorrow and return to today. We prepare for what is coming and rest in what is here. We imagine future selves without forgetting the self that is actually present. This is freedom. Not freedom from doing or thinking or planning, but freedom from being lost. Freedom from the endless becoming that never arrives. Freedom to simply be. Let us take a moment to feel this directly. Right now, there may be thoughts of the future moving through your mind. Plans, anticipations, worries, hopes. Notice them. See how they create a future you living in a future time. And now, gently, come back. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the breath moving in and out. Remember that you are here, now, in this present moment. The future you is an imagination. The present you is real. There is nothing wrong with the imagination. It has its place. But do not live there. Do not become lost in the river of becoming, always flowing towards some distant sea. The sea is here. The ocean of peace is in this very moment, if only we stop swimming toward it and simply float. The Buddha taught, ardently do what must be done today. Who knows? Tomorrow coming may be too late. This is not a grim warning. It is a loving invitation. Do not postpone living. Do not postpone peace. Do not wait until you become something other than what you are. This is your life, happening now. This is the moment of awakening, if you are willing to receive it. Let us rest here, in the simplicity of what is. The merchant learned, over time, to catch himself in the act of becoming. He still planned, still prepared, still thought about the future. But he no longer lived there. His center of gravity shifted from the imagined to the actual, from the becoming to the being. His wife noticed the change. One evening, sitting together after the day's work was done, she saw that his eyes were clear and present. He was simply there with her, in the quiet of their home. "You have stopped traveling so much," she said with a smile. He laughed softly. "I have discovered that I was already where I wanted to be." Let us rest for a moment again. Take a slow, deep breath. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have traveled far together through these gentle teachings. Now we come to something even more subtle, something that has been quietly present in all we have explored. It is the teaching of impermanence and what happens to the heart when we truly see it. The Buddha spoke of a natural progression, a path the mind walks when it begins to see clearly. He said, "Seeing impermanence, one becomes disenchanted. Being disenchanted, one becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, the mind is liberated." These are powerful words, and they deserve our careful attention. But first, let us understand what we are being freed from. Let us understand what it means to be enchanted. There is an old tale about a traveler who wandered into a strange forest. It was not like other forests. The trees sparkled with an inner light, as if stars had been woven into their branches. The flowers sang soft melodies that seemed to speak directly to the heart. The very air shimmered with beauty and promise, and every path led deeper into wonder. The traveler was captivated. Everything here seemed more vivid, more meaningful, more alive than anything in the ordinary world. Each sight brought wonder. Each sound brought delight. Colors were brighter than any colors remembered from before. Fragrances were sweeter than any perfume. The traveler wandered deeper and deeper into the forest, following one beautiful thing after another, always finding something new to marvel at, always certain that just ahead was the most beautiful thing of all. Days passed, perhaps weeks, perhaps longer. The traveler did not notice. Time seemed not to exist in this enchanted place. There was only the endless stream of wonders, each one promising fulfillment, each one leading to the next, each one suggesting that satisfaction was just around the corner, just beyond the next shimmering tree. But slowly, so slowly the traveler barely noticed at first, something began to change. The sparkle on the trees, when looked at closely, flickered and faded. What had seemed like eternal light was actually flashing on and off, appearing and disappearing, never staying. The songs of the flowers, when truly listened to, repeated themselves endlessly without variation. What had seemed like infinite music was actually a short phrase, playing over and over. The shimmer in the air, when examined, was nothing but mist and light, here one moment and gone the next. And the traveler began to see, this forest was beautiful, yes, but its beauty did not last. Each wonder arose and passed away. Each delight came and went. Nothing here could be held. Nothing here could provide the lasting fulfillment it seemed to promise. The promise itself was the enchantment. This was not a sad discovery. It was a waking up. The spell that had kept the traveler wandering in circles began to break. And with the breaking of the spell came something unexpected, relief. Freedom. A quiet peace that was deeper than all the glittering wonders of the enchanted wood. The traveler stopped walking, stood still for perhaps the first time since entering the forest, and simply breathed. This tale is a picture of our own lives. We move through a world that sparkles with promise. Pleasant experiences arise, and we are captivated. Beautiful sights, delicious tastes, moments of comfort and joy. They shimmer before us, and we reach for them, believing that in them we will find what we seek. This is enchantment. It is not a bad thing, not a mistake, not a sin. It is simply the natural response of a mind that has not yet looked closely. The world presents its wonders, and we are spellbound. We believe that the next experience will finally satisfy us. We chase one beautiful thing after another, wandering deeper into the forest. The Buddha was not condemning this enchantment. He was simply pointing out that it keeps us wandering. As long as we believe that lasting happiness can be found in experiences that come and go, we will keep searching, keep reaching, keep hoping that the next flower will sing a song that never ends. But the flowers all stop singing. The sparkle always fades. This is not a flaw in the world. It is simply the nature of things. Everything that arises also passes away. This is the truth of impermanence, and seeing it clearly is the beginning of freedom. Let us explore what happens when we really see impermanence. Not as a concept we have heard about, but as a living truth we perceive directly. There is a practice that can help us see this. It is the simple practice of watching experience as it flows. Imagine sitting quietly, as you are sitting now. The breath moves in and out. Sounds arise and fade. Sensations appear in the body and disappear. Thoughts come and go like clouds crossing the sky. Nothing stays. Everything flows. At first, this can be unsettling. We want something to hold on to, something stable, something permanent. But the more closely we watch, the more clearly we see. There is nothing to hold. The breath we are feeling now is not the breath we felt a moment ago. The sound we hear is already gone by the time we notice it. Even the one who is watching seems to shift and change, moment by moment. A teacher once guided a student through this experience. They were sitting together in a garden, the late afternoon light falling soft and golden around them. Bees hummed among the flowers. The scent of jasmine drifted on the air. It was a peaceful place, but the student's mind was troubled. "I understand the teaching of impermanence in my head," the student said. "Everything changes. Nothing lasts. I have heard this many times, but I do not feel it. It remains an idea, not a living truth." The teacher smiled gently. "Then let us stop thinking about impermanence and simply watch it. Close your eyes. Feel the breath moving. Observe it closely. Tell me, can you find a breath that stays?" The student sat quietly for a long time, watching breath after breath arise and fall. "No," they said finally. "Each breath arises and passes. The in-breath becomes the out-breath, becomes the in-breath again. I cannot find one that remains fixed." "Good. Now open your eyes and listen to the sounds around us. The birds, the wind, the distant voices. Can you find a sound that stays?" Again the student watched, listened with careful attention. Birds called to one another across the garden. Wind stirred the leaves. Somewhere far away, children laughed. "No," the student said. "Each sound comes and goes. Even when a bird sings what seems like the same song, each note is new, and then it is gone. I cannot hold any of it." "Good. Now close your eyes once more and watch your own thoughts. The movements of your mind, the images, the words, the feelings. Can you find a thought that stays?" The student sat in silence for a long while. Thoughts drifted through like clouds. Memories, plans, observations, judgments. Each one arose, lingered for a moment, and dissolved. "No," they said at last, and there was wonder in their voice. "Thoughts arise and pass away. I cannot find one that remains. Even the thought that says, 'I am watching,' comes and goes. Even the sense of being the one who watches seems to shimmer and shift. The teacher nodded slowly. This is what the Buddha called seeing impermanence. It is not an idea to be understood. It is a direct perception to be experienced. And when we see it clearly, something happens in the heart. What do you feel right now? The student paused, looking inward with that same careful attention. I feel quiet, like something I was holding onto has been released, like a spell has been broken. I feel relieved. Yes, the teacher said softly. This is disenchantment. Disenchantment. The word might sound negative to our ears. In ordinary language, to be disenchanted often means to be disappointed, disillusioned, cynical. It suggests that something we loved has let us down, and now we are bitter about it. But in the Buddha's teaching, disenchantment means something very different. It is not disappointment. It is not bitterness. It is the simple, clear recognition that what we were seeking in passing experiences cannot be found there. Not because the experiences are bad, but because they cannot be held. They flow through our fingers like water. When we see this clearly, the desperate grasping naturally relaxes. We stop expecting the impossible. We stop demanding that impermanent things provide permanent satisfaction. And in that stopping, there is an immense relief. It is like waking from a dream in which we were searching for something that did not exist. The search was exhausting. The failure to find it was frustrating. But now we are awake, and we see that there was never anything to find. The search itself was the problem. A Zen saying captures this. Before enlightenment, mountains are mountains. During the journey, mountains are no longer mountains. After enlightenment, mountains are mountains again. At first, we see the world simply enchanted by its beauty. Then we begin to question, to see through the enchantment, and everything seems strange and uncertain. But when the seeing is complete, the world returns to simplicity. Mountains are mountains. Flowers are flowers. But we no longer demand that they be anything other than what they are. We no longer ask impermanent things to be permanent. And in that acceptance, we find a peace we never knew while we were searching. The Buddha's teaching continues. Being disenchanted, one becomes dispassionate. The Pali word for dispassion is viraga. It means the absence of passion, the fading of lust, the cooling of the fever of craving. Again, this might sound negative. We value passion. We celebrate desire. A life without passion seems cold, empty, lifeless. But viraga is not coldness. It is not emptiness. It is the deep peace that comes when we are no longer driven by the urgent need to grasp and hold. It is the ease of a mind that has stopped fighting with the way things are. Think of how it feels when you are caught in strong desire. There is a heat in it, a pressure, a tension. The mind is narrow and focused. The body is tight. Everything depends on getting what we want. This is passion, and it is not peaceful. Now think of how it feels when that desire releases. When you no longer need the thing you were chasing. When the want simply fades away. There is a cooling, a relaxing, an opening. The mind becomes spacious. The body softens. Nothing depends on anything. This is dispassion. Not the absence of feeling, but the absence of desperate grasping. Not coldness, but coolness. Not emptiness, but spaciousness. Not the rejection of life, but the embrace of life as it actually is, flowing and changing, arising and passing away. The Buddha said, "Just as a great rock is not moved by the wind, so the wise are not shaken by praise or blame." This is the quality of a dispassionate mind. Not that it does not feel, but that it is not shaken. Not that it does not care, but that it is not driven. It meets each moment with equanimity, with balance, with a peace that does not depend on conditions. And finally, through dispassion, the mind is liberated. This is the fruit of the path, the natural result of seeing clearly and letting go completely. Liberation, freedom, the end of the wandering, the end of the searching, the end of the endless becoming. What is this freedom like? The Buddha described it in many ways. He called it the deathless, because it is not subject to the arising and passing away that characterizes everything else. He called it nibbana, which means cooling or extinguishing, like a flame that goes out when it is no longer fed. But perhaps the simplest description is this: it is the peace that comes when craving ends. Not a special state, not a mystical experience, not a place we go to. Simply the quiet that remains when the noise of wanting finally stops. A student once asked a teacher, "What is liberation like?" The teacher smiled. "Have you ever been carrying a heavy burden for a long time, so long that you forgot you were carrying it?" "Yes," the student said. "And then you set it down?" "Yes." "What was that like?" The student thought for a moment. "It was wonderful. I felt so light. I did not realize how heavy the burden was until I was no longer carrying it." Liberation is like that, the teacher said. You have been carrying the burden of craving, the burden of constantly wanting things to be different than they are. When that burden is set down, there is a lightness, a freedom, a peace that is indescribable. You did not know how heavy it was until you were finally free of it. These teachings may seem lofty, far beyond our ordinary experience. But remember what we discovered earlier. The end of craving is not only a final destination. It is a present possibility. We can taste disenchantment, dispassion, and liberation in small moments, many times. Right now, in this very moment, you can let the wanting soften. You can feel the enchantment loosen its grip. You can taste the cool peace of not needing things to be different. Watch the breath. See how it comes and goes. Feel the impermanence directly, not as an idea, but as a living truth. And notice what happens in the heart. Is there a quieting? A relaxing? A sense of something releasing? This is the path. Not dramatic and sudden, but gentle and gradual. Each moment of clear seeing weakens the enchantment. Each taste of dispassion cools the fever of craving. Each glimpse of liberation reminds us what is possible. The Buddha encouraged us, make an island of yourself. Make yourself your refuge. Let the Dharma be your island. Let the Dharma be your refuge. The Dharma is simply the truth of how things are. When we see impermanence, we are seeing Dharma. When we let go of grasping, we are practicing Dharma. When we taste peace, we are touching the fruits of Dharma. This is our refuge. This is our island. This is our home. Let us rest here for a moment, in the quiet that comes after understanding. And when you are ready, we will continue this journey together. There is a subtle trap that awaits us on this path. It is so subtle that many seekers fall into it without ever realizing. They may practice for years, even decades, and still be caught in its gentle grip. The trap is this: we can turn even the path of letting go into another form of wanting. We can crave non-craving. We can desire desirelessness. We can grasp at the teaching of releasing and hold it tightly in our fists. This is what we might call the in order to mind. And understanding it is one of the most important steps on the journey home. The in order to mind is always doing one thing to get another. It eats breakfast in order to have energy for work. It works in order to earn money. It earns money in order to buy security. It seeks security in order to find peace. And so on, endlessly. One thing leading to the next. Never arriving, never resting, always on the way to somewhere else. In ordinary life, this is often necessary. We must plan, prepare, work toward goals. But when this same habit enters our spiritual practice, it creates a strange and painful contradiction. We sit in order to become calm. We breathe in order to find peace. We let go in order to achieve freedom. And the very in order to keeps us bound. There is a story about a young nun who had been practicing meditation for several years. She was sincere and dedicated. She rose early each morning, sat in perfect stillness, followed her breath with careful attention. She studied the teachings, kept her precepts, and lived simply. And yet, peace eluded her. One day, she sought out an elder teacher, a woman who had practiced for many decades and was known for her quiet wisdom. The young nun found her sitting beneath a tree, mending a robe with slow, careful stitches. "Venerable teacher," the young nun said, "I have been practicing for 5 years now. I sit every day. I watch my breath. I try to let go of my thoughts. But I do not find the peace the teachings promise. What am I doing wrong?" The elder teacher continued her stitching for a moment, then looked up with kind eyes. "Tell me," she said, "when you sit and watch your breath, what are you hoping will happen?" The young nun considered. "I am hoping to become calm, to quiet my mind, to find some peace. And when you try to let go of your thoughts, what do you want?" "I want them to stop, or at least to slow down. I want to experience the stillness I have read about." The elder teacher nodded slowly. "And how is that working?" The young nun sighed. "Not well. The more I want peace, the more agitated I become. The more I try to let go, the more I seem to hold on." "Yes," the teacher said. "This is because you are practicing in order to get something. You sit in order to become calm. You watch the breath in order to quiet the mind. You let go in order to find peace. Do you see? The in order to is the problem. It is craving wearing the robes of practice." This teaching strikes at the heart of a very common confusion. We come to spiritual practice because we are suffering. We want relief. We want peace. We want to feel better. This is natural and understandable. There is nothing wrong with wanting to be free from suffering. But if we carry this wanting into the practice itself, we create a strange contradiction. We are trying to let go while holding on. We are seeking freedom while still being driven by craving. We are meditating in order to achieve something, and that very "in order to" keeps us trapped. The Buddha pointed to this when he gave one of his most paradoxical teachings. He said that liberation comes not from gaining but from releasing. Not from getting but from letting go. Not from becoming something new, but from seeing clearly what already is. Nothing is to be clung to as I or mine, he taught. Whoever knows this knows the teaching. Whoever knows the teaching knows freedom. This includes our ideas about practice. This includes our hopes for enlightenment. This includes even our desire to be free from desire. All of it must be released. All of it must be seen through. The young nun sat with the elder teacher's words. They troubled her, but also stirred something deep. "But teacher," she said, "if I do not practice in order to find peace, why practice at all? What is the point?" The elder teacher smiled. She held up the robe she was mending. "Why do I mend this robe?" she asked. "So that it can be worn again. So that it will last longer." Yes, there is a practical purpose. But watch closely. She pushed the needle through the fabric, drew the thread, pushed again. Her movements were slow and steady, completely absorbed. Am I mending this robe in order to finish? Or am I simply mending? The young nun watched. There was no hurry in the teacher's movements, no leaning forward toward completion. She was simply there, with the needle and thread and fabric, doing what she was doing. "You are simply mending," the nun said slowly. "Yes. And when I sit in meditation, I am simply sitting. When I watch the breath, I am simply watching. There is no in order to. There is just this moment, this breath, this experience. The peace you seek is not somewhere ahead, waiting to be achieved. It is here, in the simple act of being present, without wanting anything to be different." The young nun felt something shift inside her. It was subtle, like a knot loosening that she had not known was tight. "So I should not want peace?" "You can want it," the teacher said gently. "Wanting will arise. It is natural. But do not make your practice dependent on getting it. Do not sit in order to become peaceful. Just sit. The peace will come or it will not. Either way, you are simply sitting. And in that simplicity, you may discover that peace was never absent. It was only hidden behind your wanting. There is another way this "in order to" mind shows up, and it is even more subtle. It is the expectation that practice will produce results. Expectation seems reasonable. If we do something, we expect something to happen. If we plant seeds, we expect crops. If we study, we expect to learn. Why should practice be different? But expectation carries within it a kind of demand. It says, "I am doing this, therefore I should get that." And when the "that" does not arrive on our schedule, frustration follows. Doubt creeps in. We wonder if we are doing something wrong, if the teaching is flawed, if we are simply not capable of awakening. A teacher once described expectation as a thief that steals the present moment. We are so focused on what we hope will happen that we miss what is actually happening. We are so busy waiting for peace that we do not notice the peace that is already here, quietly present beneath our waiting. There is a difference between expectation and aspiration. This difference is important to understand. Aspiration is a direction, an orientation of the heart. We aspire to be kinder, more peaceful, more awake. This aspiration guides us, motivates us, keeps us on the path. It is like a star by which we navigate, always present in the sky, showing us which way to go. Expectation is a demand, a grasping at results. We expect to feel calm after sitting. We expect to be enlightened after years of practice. We expect our effort to be rewarded with specific experiences. Aspiration opens us. Expectation closes us. Aspiration is patient. Expectation is impatient. Aspiration trusts the process. Expectation tries to control the outcome. The Buddha spoke of this when he said, "An idea that is developed and put into action is more important than an idea that exists only as an idea." The action is what matters. The doing, the practicing, the showing up, moment after moment. The results take care of themselves. We cannot force awakening. We can only create the conditions and then let go. There is a story about a practitioner who struggled greatly with pleasant fantasies during meditation. Whenever they sat, the mind would drift into daydreams. Pleasant scenes would unfold, future successes, imagined conversations, memories sweetened by time, romantic scenarios, creative projects, victories and recognitions. These fantasies were seductive, warm and inviting, and the practitioner would often lose long stretches of sitting time wandering in their glowing landscapes. Various remedies were tried, noting the fantasies as thinking and returning to the breath, increasing the effort of concentration, trying to suppress the images before they could form, scolding the mind for its wandering. Nothing worked for long. The fantasies always returned, patient and persistent, wearing different costumes but always carrying the same promise: "Come with me and you will feel good." Then one day, after years of this struggle, the practitioner had a simple idea. At the very moment a fantasy began, before it could unfold its seductive story, they would imagine a sign. Just a simple road sign, like one might see at the end of a street. The sign had 2 words: dead end. Just that. A mental road sign, planted at the entrance to each fantasy. Dead end. This road goes nowhere. This path leads to nothing. You can travel it if you wish. You can spend an hour wandering down this pleasant corridor, but you will only end up back where you started, no closer to peace than before. Something about this simple sign changed everything. It was not a struggle against the fantasy. It was not a suppression or a judgment. It was simply a clear seeing. This is a dead end. And with that seeing, the fantasy lost its power. Why walk down a road that goes nowhere? Why spend precious sitting time traveling to a destination that does not exist? The practitioner would notice the sign, smile gently at the mind's familiar tricks, and return to the breath. I realized, the practitioner later shared with others, that I had been following these fantasies because I believed they led somewhere. I believed that indulging in them would bring some satisfaction, some pleasure, some relief from the difficulty of just sitting still. But they never did. They were pleasant for a moment, like cotton candy, and then I was back at the beginning, no better off than before, often worse because I had lost the thread of my practice. Seeing them as dead ends freed me. Not through force, not through willpower, but through simple understanding. This is the essence of what we have been exploring. The in order to mind believes that something ahead will bring fulfillment. It practices in order to get peace. It follows fantasies in order to get pleasure. It expects results in order to feel successful. But the Buddha's teaching points in a different direction entirely. Liberation comes not from getting, but from releasing. Not from arriving somewhere new, but from recognizing that we have never left home. Not from achieving a special state, but from letting go of the craving that makes ordinary states seem insufficient. Achieved is the end of craving, the Buddha said after his awakening. This was his declaration of freedom. Not achieved is a great experience, or achieved is a special state, or achieved is something I did not have before. Achieved is the end of craving. That is all. That is everything. When we stop practicing in order to get something, something remarkable happens. The practice becomes its own reward. Sitting becomes simply sitting. Breathing becomes simply breathing. Each moment becomes complete in itself, not a stepping stone to some better moment ahead. And in that completeness, we discover the peace we were seeking all along. It was never somewhere else. It was never waiting in the future. It was here, in this moment, hidden only by our endless reaching for something more. A Zen master was once asked by a student, "What is the essence of your teaching? After all these years, what have you learned?" The master considered for a moment, then replied simply, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The student was puzzled. This seemed too ordinary, too obvious. "But teacher, everyone does that. Even animals do that. What is special about it? What is the great wisdom in eating when hungry and sleeping when tired?" "Ah," the master said, his eyes twinkling. "But when most people eat, they are thinking about something else. They are planning tomorrow's work, or reliving yesterday's conversation, or worrying about some problem that may never arise. When they sleep, they are dreaming of tomorrow, or rehearsing the past, or tossing in the fever of wanting. They are never simply doing what they are doing. They are always somewhere else, wanting something else, practicing life in order to get somewhere, to become something, to achieve some state they imagine is better than this." He paused and took a sip of tea. "I simply eat when I eat," he continued. "Nothing else. Just the taste, the chewing, the swallowing. I simply sleep when I sleep. Just the lying down, the breathing, the letting go. Nothing else. No in order to. No wanting something more. This is the secret that is no secret. This is the freedom that everyone is looking for in all the wrong places." The student sat with these words. They seemed simple, almost disappointingly so. And yet, when he tried to eat just eating, with nothing else, he discovered how difficult it was. The mind wanted to wander. The wanting wanted to want. The in order to kept inserting itself. Eating in order to finish. Eating in order to get to the next task. Eating in order to have energy. Never just eating. It took years before the student understood what the master had been pointing toward. And when he finally understood, he laughed. It had been right in front of him the whole time. Let us rest in this understanding for a moment. You are already here. You have already arrived. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Let us sit together now with one of the most curious and freeing teachings the Buddha offered. It is a teaching that has puzzled seekers for thousands of years. It is also a teaching that, when it finally settles into the heart, brings a quiet smile and a surprising lightness. The teaching is about the self, about this feeling we all have of being someone, of being a me moving through the world, and about what happens when we look gently at this someone we assume ourselves to be. There is a story about a dog who lived in a small village. He was a good dog, gentle and loyal, known for his watchfulness. He took his role as guardian seriously, always alert to anything unusual. One evening, as the sun was setting and the light grew soft and golden, the dog was walking through the village square. Long shadows stretched across the ground. The air was cooling. It was that quiet time when day slowly becomes night. The dog passed by an old stone wall, one that had stood there longer than anyone could remember. Moss grew in the cracks. Vines trailed down its surface. And there, in the gentle half-light, the dog noticed something. A shape, a figure, something by the wall that had not been there before. The dog stopped and looked. He tilted his head, trying to understand what he was seeing. It certainly looked like something. It had the outline of a figure, standing still in the shadows. The dog watched it carefully, waiting to see if it would move. It did not move, but it did not go away either. So, the dog did what dogs do. He barked. Not frantically, but persistently. A steady alert, letting the village know that something was there, something that perhaps should be investigated. The villagers heard and came out of their homes. They looked where the dog was looking. They saw the old wall, the moss, the vines, the way the fading light fell across the stones. And they smiled kindly. "Dear dog," they said, "there is nothing there. It is only shadows, only the way the light plays on the old stones." But the dog kept watching. To him, it still looked like something. He could not quite let go of what he was seeing. Long after the villagers had returned to their homes, long after the stars had come out and the night had grown quiet, part of him was still watching that wall, still certain there was something there. A wise writer once used an image like this to describe the human condition. He wrote, "Whoever thinks that a self exists and acts upon it is like a dog barking up a tree that is not there." A dog barking up a tree that is not there. What a curious image. What a gentle way of describing something so important. We spend so much of our lives tending to this self we take ourselves to be. We work to make it comfortable. We wonder what others think of it. We compare it to other selves. We build our days around its needs and preferences. But what if, when we look closely, this self is like that figure in the shadows? What if it is simply an arrangement of thoughts and feelings and sensations that, in a certain light, looks like something solid, something continuous, something that needs all this attention? This is what the Buddha discovered. Not that we do not exist at all, but that we do not exist quite the way we imagine. The self we take to be so solid is more like a river than a rock, more like a process than a thing, more like weather than a mountain. A student once asked a teacher about this puzzling teaching. They were sitting together in a quiet room, afternoon light falling softly through the window. "Teacher," the student said, "the teachings say there is no fixed self, but I feel like a self. I experience myself as someone. Is this feeling wrong?" The teacher smiled warmly. "It is not that you are not real," he said. "We all feel real, and that feeling is natural. The question is whether you are as solid and fixed as you feel yourself to be." The student considered this. "What do you mean?" "Let me offer you an image," the teacher said. "Think of a rainbow. A rainbow is real, yes? You can see it arching across the sky after rain. You can point to it and say, 'Look, there it is, stretching between those two hills.' It has colors, beautiful colors, red and orange and yellow, green and blue and violet. It has shape and presence and beauty." "Yes," the student said. "Rainbows are lovely. But can you touch a rainbow? Can you hold it in your hands? Can you put it in your pocket and carry it home to show your family?" The student smiled. "No. It would disappear if I tried to grasp it. It is not that kind of thing." "Exactly. The rainbow is real as an appearance, as an experience. You can see it. You can enjoy it. You can be moved by its beauty. But it is not solid. It is not a thing you can hold. It is light and water and the angle of the sun coming together for a moment to create something beautiful, then gently dissolving when conditions change. The rainbow does not go anywhere. It simply stops appearing when the conditions that created it shift." The student sat with this image. It was beautiful and a little mysterious. "And I am like that?" the student asked. "Everything is like that," the teacher said gently. "Thoughts, feelings, sensations, this sense of being someone. All of it arising when conditions come together, passing away when conditions shift. Never as solid as it seems. Never as fixed as we imagine. We are all rainbows, my friend. We suffer because we imagine ourselves to be stones, and then we try to act like stones, and we wonder why life feels so hard and heavy. So, what should I do?" "Nothing dramatic," the teacher said. "Just notice. When you feel very solid, very fixed, very much as someone who must be protected and defended, just pause and remember the rainbow. Remember that you too are an arising, a beautiful coming together of conditions, and that you can be enjoyed and appreciated without being grasped." This teaching matters because of what it reveals about the roots of our unease. Remember, we have been exploring the nature of wanting, this restlessness that the Buddha saw as the source of so much unnecessary suffering. We have seen how it works in the pursuit of comfort, in the endless becoming, in the turning away from what we do not like. But all of this wanting grows from a single root, the sense of self. When we want pleasant experiences, who is it that wants to be pleased? The self. When we want to become something in the future, who is it that wants to continue and grow? The self. When we want to escape from difficulty, who is it that wants to get away? The self. As long as we take this self to be solid and fixed, we will keep tending to it, worrying about it, working for it. But when we see it more clearly, when we recognize it as a process rather than a thing, something relaxes. The tending becomes lighter, The worry softens. We discover that what we were protecting so carefully may not need quite so much protection after all. The dog can rest now. The figure was only shadows. There is a story about a practitioner who went through a difficult stretch during a long retreat. The days felt heavy. The sitting was uncomfortable. The mind was busy and would not settle. Each session felt like effort, and there seemed to be no reward for the effort. No opening, no ease. One afternoon, sitting in the meditation hall, the practitioner heard birds singing outside. They sounded so free, so effortless. And a thought arose, quiet and honest. I wish I could just rest. I wish all this trying could simply stop. It was not a desperate thought. It was more like a tiredness, a longing to put something down. The practitioner recognized it as a kind of wanting too, just pointing in a different direction. Instead of wanting more, it was wanting less. Instead of wanting to become something, it was wanting to unbecome. But then a gentler thought arose. Who was it that was so tired? Who was it that wanted to rest? It was the self, of course. The same self that wanted comfort, that wanted success, that wanted to be somewhere other than here. Always the self at the center, always the self reaching in one direction or another. And then came the softest thought of all. Was this tired self actually solid? Was it actually there, in the way it felt itself to be? Or was it too just a collection of thoughts and feelings, arising and passing, no more permanent than the discomfort it was trying to escape? The practitioner looked, gently, without forcing anything, and could not find a solid self anywhere. There was tiredness, yes. There was discomfort. There was the wishing for ease. But there was no one to whom these things were happening. There was only the happening itself. Something released. Not dramatically, but quietly, like a sigh. The difficulty did not disappear. But somehow it was lighter now. The one who was struggling with it, the one who wanted it to stop, had become transparent, like mist in soft light. The Buddha spoke of this recognition in one of his clearest teachings. He said, "The body is not self. Feelings are not self. Perceptions are not self. Thoughts are not self. Consciousness is not self. Whatever is not yours, let it go. When you let it go, that will lead to your peace and happiness. Everything we might point to and say, 'This is me,' turns out, upon gentle inspection, to be not quite me. Not because it does not exist, but because it does not belong to anyone. It is simply happening, like weather, like seasons, like the flowing of water." This can seem strange when we first hear it. If there is no solid self, who am I? What is left? But the teaching is not that we disappear. It is that we were never the fixed, separate something we imagined. We were always the river, not the rock. We were always the rainbow, not the thing we could hold. And rivers are real. Rainbows are real. Process is real. Life is abundantly, softly, undeniably real. We do not lose anything by seeing through the idea of a fixed self. We gain something precious. We gain the freedom to flow, to change, to rest without the constant work of maintaining a position that was never truly ours. A teacher was once asked What happens when we see through the self? Nothing happens to the self, the teacher said. The self was never solid to begin with. What happens is that we stop insisting it was. We stop watching the wall so intently. We stop guarding what does not need guarding. And then we can finally rest. But what remains? The student asked. If the self is not solid, what is left? Everything remains, the teacher said warmly. Life remains in all its richness. Experience remains in all its color and texture. The birds still sing their morning songs. The wind still moves through the trees. Tea still warms the hands. Friends still bring joy. Nothing is lost except a burden we did not need to carry. What is left is what was always here. Only now it can be enjoyed more freely, more lightly, without the constant weight of me and mine pressing down on every moment. The student was quiet for a while, letting this settle. It sounds peaceful, the student said finally. It is peaceful, the teacher agreed. It is the most natural thing in the world. We make it complicated, but it is actually very simple. Just stop insisting on being something solid. Just let yourself be what you already are. A flowing, changing, beautiful process. No more in need of protection than a river is in need of protection. No more in need of defending than a cloud. Let us rest in this gentle teaching. And when you are ready, we will continue together, drawing these teachings gently toward their close. We have been sitting with a strange and beautiful teaching. The teaching that the self we take to be so solid is more like a rainbow than a rock. We have watched the dog stop barking at a figure that was never there. We have begun to sense that what we defend so fiercely may not need defending after all. Now the Buddha offers us something practical, a way to work with this understanding, a simple practice that can loosen the grip of identification and bring a surprising lightness to our days. The teaching begins with a walk through a grove of trees. There is a story the Buddha told to his students. They were sitting together in a forest, as they often did, surrounded by tall trees and dappled light. The air smelled of earth and leaves. Birds called to one another in the branches above. The Buddha gestured to the grove around them. Suppose, he said, that people came to this forest and gathered up all the grass, all the sticks, all the fallen branches, all the leaves and twigs scattered on the ground. Suppose they carried these things away in great bundles on their backs. Or suppose they piled them up in the clearing and burned them until nothing remained but ash. Or suppose they did whatever they wished with these things, scattering them in the river or grinding them to dust. He paused and looked at his students with that gentle, penetrating gaze they knew so well. Would you think, these people are carrying us away, these people are burning us, these people are doing with us as they wish? The students shook their heads. No, Venerable Sir, we would not think that. Those things are not us. They do not belong to us. The grass and sticks and branches are simply grass and sticks and branches, part of the forest, part of nature. What happens to them does not happen to us. We would watch without distress, without feeling that we ourselves were being harmed. Exactly, the Buddha said. You would not be troubled because those things are not yours. They are not you. They are not what you are. You can watch them come and go without suffering. He let this sink in. The forest was quiet around them. Somewhere, a bird sang 3 clear notes, then fell silent. Sunlight moved through the leaves, making patterns on the ground. In the same way, the Buddha continued, the body is not yours. Feelings are not yours. Perceptions are not yours. The movements of the mind are not yours. Even consciousness, the knowing itself, is not yours. He looked at each of his students in turn. Whatever is not yours, abandon it. When you have abandoned it, that will lead to your welfare and happiness. This teaching can sound strange, even alarming when we first hear it. The body is not mine? My feelings are not mine? What can this possibly mean? But the Buddha was not saying that these things do not exist. He was not saying that experience is an illusion or that nothing matters. He was pointing to something much more freeing. When we say something is mine, we create a relationship of ownership. We become attached to it. We identify with it. We feel that what happens to it happens to us. If the body hurts, I hurt. If feelings are unpleasant, I am suffering. If thoughts are confused, I am lost. But what if we could relate to these experiences differently? What if we could see the body the way we see the grass in a forest, as something that exists, something that has its own nature, but not something that is essentially us? What if we could watch feelings arise and pass the way we watch clouds cross the sky, interesting and real but not personally owned? This is what the Buddha was inviting. Not a denial of experience, but a loosening of the grip. Not a rejection of life, but a freedom within it. There is a story about a woman who came to practice late in life. She had raised children, worked hard, known joy and sorrow, and now, with her years growing long, she had turned toward the inner life, seeking peace. But peace was hard to find. Her body ached. Old injuries flared. Sitting in meditation was uncomfortable, sometimes painful. And she found herself fighting with the pain, resenting it, feeling that it was ruining her practice. This body, she said to her teacher one day, frustration clear in her voice. It will not cooperate. It hurts and aches and complains. I cannot find peace because my body will not let me. The teacher listened with kindness. She had heard this many times before, from many students. It was one of the most common struggles. Tell me, the teacher said, whose body is it? The woman looked confused. It is my body. Who else's would it be? And because it is yours, you feel responsible for it? You feel that its pain is your failure. You feel that you must fix it before you can be at peace? The woman nodded slowly. This was exactly how she felt. What if, the teacher said gently, the body were like the grass in the forest? What if it was something that exists, something that has its own nature, something that changes according to its own laws, but not something that belongs to you in the way you think it does? The woman frowned. I do not understand. The grass grows and dies. The sticks fall from trees. The leaves change color and drop. All of this happens according to nature. You do not feel that the falling of a leaf is your personal failure. You do not feel that you must fix the forest before you can be at peace. No, the woman agreed. That would be silly. And yet you feel you must fix this body. You feel its pain is your problem. You fight with it as though it were an enemy or a disobedient servant. or a project that has gone wrong. The teacher paused. What if you simply sat with it the way you might sit with the forest? Noticing the sensations, feeling what is there, but not taking it so personally? Not mine to fix, not mine to fight. Just a body, doing what bodies do, like grass and sticks and leaves doing what they do. Something shifted in the woman's face. A softening, a release of something she had been carrying for a long time. I think I understand, she said quietly. This practice of not mine can be applied to everything we experience. The Buddha laid it out clearly. He spoke of 5 aspects of experience, 5 things that together make up what we usually call me. The first is the body, the physical form. The sensations of warmth and cold, tension and ease, pleasure and pain. All of this is form, and none of it is essentially ours. It arises and changes according to conditions. We can care for it, attend to it, appreciate it, but we do not have to identify with it so completely that its every ache becomes our personal drama. The second is feeling, which in the Buddha's teaching means something specific, the quality of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral that accompanies every experience. A sound arises, and there is a pleasant feeling with it, or an unpleasant feeling, or neither. This feeling tone colors everything we experience, and it too is not ours. It comes and goes according to conditions. We do not have to take it so personally. The third is perception, the mind's recognition and labeling of what it experiences. We see a shape and perceive tree. We hear a sound and perceive bird. We feel a sensation and perceive pain or pleasure. This perceiving is happening constantly, and it too is not ours. It is simply the mind doing what minds do. The fourth is what the Buddha called mental formations. This includes all the movements of the mind, thoughts, emotions, intentions, reactions. Anger arises, joy arises, planning arises, worrying arises. All of these mental movements are formations, and they too are not ours. They arise from conditions and pass when conditions change. We do not have to identify with every thought as my thought, every emotion as my emotion. The fifth is consciousness itself, the knowing quality that is aware of all the rest. We might think that this, at least, is surely me. This awareness, this presence that knows. But even consciousness, the Buddha taught, is not ultimately ours. It too arises and passes. It too is conditioned. It too can be held lightly, seen clearly, appreciated without grasping. A practitioner once described working with this teaching on a long retreat. Each day, during the slow walking meditation, moving back and forth along a path through the trees, they would move through the 5 aspects, gently investigating each one. I would feel my foot touching the ground, they said, the pressure, the texture, the slight coolness of the earth through my sandal. And I would notice sensations arising, not mine, just sensations, doing what sensations do, appearing and disappearing according to conditions I did not create and cannot control. Then I would notice the feeling tone, pleasant as the body moved smoothly and the morning air felt fresh on my skin, or unpleasant when there was stiffness in my hips or an ache in my back. I would notice this and remind myself, not mine, just feeling, arising and passing, coloring the experience but not owned by anyone. Then perception, ground, foot, movement, tree, bird. Labels appearing automatically, the mind naming everything it encountered. Not mine. Just the mind doing its naming work, as naturally as the eye sees or the ear hears. Then the mental formations, perhaps boredom arising as the walking continued, perhaps peace settling in, perhaps planning what to eat after the session, perhaps judgment about how well or poorly I was practicing. All of these movements of mind, I practiced noticing. Not mine, just mind weather, coming and going like clouds, like wind, like nothing that needed to be taken personally. And then the awareness itself, this knowing that knows all the rest. The presence that was aware of body, feeling, perception, thought. Even this I practiced holding lightly, not clinging to it as the real me, the one true thing in all the flux. Just awareness, doing what awareness does, arising when conditions allow, changing, not permanent, not owned. The practitioner smiled, remembering those long quiet days. At first it felt strange, almost artificial, like I was pretending not to own my own experience, playing a game with myself. But over time, something relaxed. Something I had not known was tense began to loosen. The constant defending, the constant identifying, the constant "this is me, this is happening to me," all of that began to quiet down. It was not that I made it stop. It just became less interesting, less necessary, less compelling. And what was left, the practitioner said, was just experience. Just life, happening. Vivid, clear, undeniable. More vivid, actually, than before, because I was not filtering it all through the question of, what does this mean for me? It was like discovering that I had been carrying a weight I did not know I was carrying, and setting it down, and realizing I had always been free to set it down. I just never knew. The Buddha gave a beautiful image for this freedom. He said, just as a blue or red or white lotus, born in the water, grows up in the water, rises to the surface, and stands unsoiled by the water, so too, one who has seen the truth stands unsoiled by the world. The lotus is in the world. Its roots are in the mud. Its stem rises through the water. It does not escape to some other place. But the water does not cling to its petals. It remains unstained by what surrounds it. This is what the practice of not mine offers. We do not leave the world. We do not escape from experience. We remain fully present, fully engaged, fully alive. But we are no longer so stuck. Experience flows through us like water through an open hand. Feelings arise and pass. Thoughts come and go. The body does what bodies do. And through it all, there is a lightness, a freedom, a peace that is not dependent on everything going well. The woman with the aching body discovered this. Over weeks and months of practice, she learned to sit with her body as she might sit with the forest. The pain did not disappear. Some days it was strong, but her relationship to it changed. It is like the pain is still there, she said to her teacher one day, but I am not inside it anymore. I am sitting with it, the way you might sit with an old friend who is having a hard time. Present, caring, but not lost in their struggle. The teacher nodded. And how is your search for peace? The woman laughed softly. "I think I found it," she said. "Not where I was looking. Not by fixing the body, but by letting go of the idea that the body was mine to fix. The peace was here all along, underneath all my fighting." This is the gift of the Buddha's teaching. Whatever is not yours, abandon it. When you have abandoned it, that will lead to your welfare and happiness. We abandon not by throwing away, but by releasing our grip. We abandon not by denying, but by ceasing to claim ownership. We abandon not by escaping experience, but by letting experience be what it is, without the constant commentary of mine, mine, mine. The grass and sticks and branches in the forest are not diminished because we do not own them. They are still beautiful. They still have their place. They are still part of the living whole. And we are not diminished by releasing what we never truly owned. We are freed. We are lightened. We discover that what we were protecting so fiercely was never in danger. And what we are, underneath all the protecting, is vaster and more peaceful than we ever imagined. Let us rest here, in this spacious teaching, and when you are ready, we will continue together, drawing these teachings toward their close. We have traveled far together through these gentle teachings. We began with the Buddha's Song of Awakening, the house builder finally seen. We watched desire arise and pass like weather. We discovered that past and future are thoughts arising now, mountains made of mist. We met the dog watching shadows on a wall and learned that what we guard so carefully may not need guarding at all. Now we come to the end of our journey together, or rather, to a new beginning. There is a story about a traveler who came to a wide river. She had been walking for many days through difficult terrain, rocky and steep, and her legs were tired. But now she stood at the water's edge, and on the far side she could see green fields and gentle hills. The grass there looked soft. The hills rolled peacefully under a quiet sky. It looked restful there, more peaceful than anything she had known. She found a small boat by the shore, weathered but sturdy, left there by some kind soul for travelers like herself. She climbed in and took up the oars. The crossing took time and effort. Her arms grew tired. But stroke by stroke, she made her way across. Finally, the boat scraped onto the sandy shore of the other side. She stepped out onto the soft grass and felt relief wash through her entire body. She had made it. She was here. But then a thought arose. She looked back at the little boat, rocking gently in the shallows. It had served her so well. Without it, she would never have crossed the river. She owed everything to this boat. Perhaps she should carry it with her, hoist it onto her shoulders and take it along, just in case she needed it again. A wise traveler was passing by on the path. He saw her considering the boat, her hands reaching toward it, and he smiled kindly. The boat was useful for crossing, he said. It did its job beautifully, but it is not useful for walking through fields. It would only slow you down, tire you out, keep you bent under a weight you no longer need. Set it down. Let it rest here by the shore. Someone else may need it someday for their own crossing. You are free now to walk unencumbered, to enjoy the soft grass beneath your feet. The traveler understood. She gave the boat a grateful pat, a silent thank you, and turned toward the green fields, walking lightly, carrying nothing. And so we come to the end of our time together. The teachings have been shared. The stories have been told. The ancient words have done their gentle work, settling into you like rain settling into the earth, finding their way to wherever they are needed most. You do not need to remember anything. You do not need to hold on to any of this. The teachings are like seeds now, planted in quiet soil. They will grow in their own time, in their own way. Trust that something has been received, even if you cannot name it. The Buddha walked this earth long ago, but the peace he discovered is not far away. It is here, in the stillness of this moment. It is here, in the softness of your breath. It is here, in the vast and gentle space where you are resting now. May you sleep deeply and wake refreshed. May you carry lightness into your days. May you remember, when the wanting arises, that you can let it go. May you remember, when the self feels heavy, that you are more like a rainbow than a stone. And may you know, in the quietest part of your heart, that you have always been free, that the peace you seek has never been absent. That home is not somewhere you need to find, but something you already are. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.